Well, according to Scott Edinger, the founder of Edinger Consulting, remote workers are often more engaged and more passionate about the companies they work for compared to those who become desk jockeys. Joining us on the desk to discuss work shifting is Sean Wainer from Citrix Systems South Africa. I like the concept of remote work.
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of people do.
It's very compelling, yes.
Does it mean that you have more passionate employees?
Absolutely. We've done a lot of studies at Citrix, and if you just think about it personally, the idea of being able to work from anywhere and being productive from anywhere not only engages you as an employee, it's more productivity for the company. It saves a lot of time, so the productivity goes up. Good example is travel. A lot of people I speak to these days are using the Gautrain. It's a 15-20 minute journey that you'd normally be sitting staring out the window. If you can be online and be more productive using your corporate information, why not? Better for the company, better for you.
But let's be honest here. How many corporates out there really don't want you under their eye during the daytime?
It's definitely something that has to be overcome in South Africa, particularly with the big corporates. We found that there's almost a goldfish mentality. So they equate physical presence with productivity, which many studies have proven isn't necessarily the case. Just because you have bums on seats, it doesn't mean that things are getting done. Arthur Goldstuck, an IT guru of note, he did a study which found that Facebook use in South Africa peaked between 9 and 10 in the morning when people first arrived at work, and again at 4 and 5. So that leads me to believe that people sitting at desks are not working flat out from 9 to 5 all day.
Exactly, but it's still the mentality that we've got a long way to go until people endorse the fact that their whole entire workforce could be off-site.
So, looking through some of the Citrix research, for example, actually having a look at a range of countries in North America, South America, Europe, there's about 37% of them that are actively using the work shifting idea. I think what we're seeing is that there's already a blurring of lines between work and home. If you look at the stats in South Africa, a lot of people are actually taking their work home. They're working far longer than the 9 to 5 hours. So I think we're almost there. It's almost just a shift in a slight paradigm shift to actually get corporates involved.
So you know the question now. Have you embraced?
Well, look, I manage journalists, so in the good old days when I used to be one of those that I now subsequently manage, I used to be able to convince the boss that I was working very well at the Baron on Main. Look, the reality is that there are some people that are made to work remotely, and there are other people that need to be managed and gives them structure during their work day. I think one of the things that did come through quite strongly through this Harvard article was actually the talking about how passionate unengaged or disengaged employees, in other words, not those who just see it as a task to come to work every time, the relationship they have between their managers and themselves. So what they found was that when you weren't actually working at the office and you said, all right, I've got to go and report in on a Friday, I need half an hour where I unpack exactly what I've done, and they found levels of engagement and passion for the brands that they were representing actually went up with so-called disengaged employees. And I thought that was quite interesting because when you sit and you work in the same environment the whole time, basically you get so used to seeing that person there. You can barge into their office whenever you feel like it. You can grab them and you can talk. You can basically just talk social.
Rather than truly engaging and dealing with the issues.
And you end up having basically telephone calls or conferences or meetings for the sake of having meetings. Whereas the disengaged employees that have very, very fixed periods in which they're expected to deliver certain reports, certain outputs, tend to be much more engaged when they're brought in for very specific points.
But there must be certain industries, certain companies that are more suited to remote working.
Absolutely. Clearly if you're in a labour-intensive market, in retail, in mining, anything like that, you need to be on site. Yes, that's not going to work for you. But what management need to understand, and this is a double-edged sword in South Africa, on the one hand, management need to understand that work is what you do, not where you are. I reiterate that all the time. And on the other hand, there's the IT management, which are saying control. We can't let our users go out into the big wide world, onto unsecured Wi-Fi networks and have our corporate information. And there's a lot of really good ways to address that. Now, the other thing that comes into play, which is extremely interesting around what we're discussing around the joy of doing work and more job satisfaction, is we're seeing showing my age here, but youth coming into the market space. People born in the late 80s, people born in the 90s starting to work, and the generation gap will say that they're different. And the mentality is, if I can work on a Saturday night or a Sunday afternoon, why can I not go and watch a movie on a Wednesday? So the ability to be able to work from anywhere is becoming very prevalent and relevant in South Africa. Who is embracing it? Financial services, very strong in this country. They tend to pioneer around technology. They're particularly strong. We've seen a big uptick on that.
The IT companies are ahead of the curve on this front,
Yep.
given their access to
Absolutely.
the devices that
Absolutely.
they can operate across.
So device usage, the advent of bring your own computing is enormous in South Africa as well. Bring your iPad in, bring your Samsung Galaxy tablet, your Mac, anything that you want to work on. That increases user satisfaction as well. I don't want to work on a monolithic product that you've given me. I want to be more flexible in the way that I work. And if you're given the tools that you like using, it does improve your productivity.
Although, Mark, you point to the fact that engagement is much more real if you do it for half an hour on a Friday after being remotely orientated for the rest of the time. Surely it does bring into question the concept of a corporate culture. How can you establish a corporate culture?
Sure. I think you need to make sure that whoever works for you buys into what you're selling, what you're producing, and that you align the work tools with that. So, for example, HP, they have an external sales team. So they provide hot desks for that sales team to just come in and use when they need to. At FinWeek, we also have the concept of hot desks for freelance journalists to come in and use when they're in the area or when they need Wi-Fi. But if your certain employees don't really enjoy working outside of the office, which many don't, then you need to make sure you have the tools and the setup available for them.
So it's about getting a balance right. It's almost like an energy mix, how much you use of this and that, and that's really what you've got to strive for.
And I think what we've spoken about so far is very much from the perspective of the employee. If you have a look from the perspective of the employer, it basically enables them to widen their pool of available resources in terms of tapping into employees who are maybe based elsewhere. So
can I jump in there? How do you remunerate people that are employed off-site, remote offices? Is there a difference here? You're saying no way, you pay them the same.
No difference. You should be able to what I call life slice. You should be able to transition between work and life almost instantly. You can go to your daughter's ballet, your son's soccer match, have a device in front of you and transition. I'm at work, I'm at play, I'm at work, I'm at play. It should be as simple as that, and therefore there should be no difference in terms of the way that you manage an individual or pay him.
Sorry, Simona.
I was going to say, maybe I just want to jump in. Maybe media would be slightly different from a traditional IT environment, but I do think that media does, typically you can decide various ways in which to remunerate, but at the end of the day, remuneration ultimately cannot produce a finished product by a certain time, inside a certain window. And I think that you can do some very cool things with regards to remuneration without tying some. Remember, one of the biggest costs for people getting to work is actually the cost of getting to work. So that eats into the total salary. If you can even free up the time that they're taking to get in, it immediately has a saving for them from that perspective. So I think you can be quite clever about it. Look, trying to bill per minutes or that kind of thing is very difficult to work from that environment. But I do think you can be quite. It's an output-based environment.
Output-based environment, that's the key here. It's about the delivery.
Correct.
There's also the saving that could come in from having to no longer need to relocate employees. So, for example, a lot of the Johannesburg-based head office companies might have some high-profile employees in Cape Town, where for the employees in Cape Town, the benefits of living in Cape Town are sufficient that they might be prepared to take a salary cut. Ironically, you don't find too many people from Joburg not volunteering to move down to Cape Town.
I've just been down there yesterday. I'm very happy to be back in Joburg, I have to say.
It means that companies can actually access experts wherever the experts are based, and that's not just necessarily within the like the country itself, but maybe accessing teams that are based overseas, and then this whole idea of needing to be a 24/7 service. It enables companies to actually roll with the time zones. So having offices that are actually come live at different hours of the day.
I want to bring it back to the key here, and I think we said it just a moment ago, and that is that this is all performance-based. If somebody is performing well, reward them. If they perform better because they're working remotely, give them more license to work remotely.
Absolutely, and Citrix as an organisation is a technology company. We deliver the technology that allows you to remote work. So what I always talk about is it's not an IT problem anymore. We've got a solution to the problem, whether it's security, whether it's delivery, whether it's access to applications. When I talk to people, I say to them that work shifting is not an IT problem, it becomes an HR problem. Because the one thing you cannot do is you cannot interview for work ethic. And that's what it comes down to. You're allowing somebody to work, you're going to have to trust. It's a relationship based on trust. Is the guy working or is he sitting by the pool?
One other question and challenge perhaps that we deal with in South Africa is the infrastructure.
Sure.
Is it robust enough to allow for remote office sites effectively? That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, it definitely has been a problem. The lack of reliable broadband, there aren't very many Wi-Fi hotspots in South Africa. Up to now, the technology, say iPads and laptops, have been very expensive, but we're seeing all of those obstacles come down. So the cost of broadband is decreasing. With the consumerization of IT, technology is becoming more affordable. So those obstacles are falling away, which makes work shifting more viable in this country.
And I mean, what you're seeing is the development of, for example, cloud computing, which enables data to be centrally based and that anyone within the platform can actually access it. Just to go back to what you mentioned about the HR issue, it really depends also on how well the boss is able to manage the process. Are they able to sufficiently engage, adequately communicate? Obviously, there's some concepts that you can't really translate over an email. It would simply take too long. So it's whether they can adapt and be flexible enough within the situation to make sure that the productivity is coming through.